Lionheart Series got back underway last Thursday at Homestead, Miami, but it was the Lionheart Retro Series utilizing the L79 during its first race under the Lionheart banner. When the race got underway, it was Trevor Malone leading the full field of 43 cars to the green. The action quickly heated up with Malone and James Krahula dueling it out in the early laps with Dan Guerin in tow. The caution flag flew for the first time on lap 7 for a multi-car crash triggered when Lionheart newcomers J.M. Cormier and Brandon Hobart got together in turn 1. Krahula led the field back to green and would hold station until the caution flew again on lap 16 for an incident between Rory Carlins and Dustin Wardlow. The battle for the lead really heated up when Dan Guerin went 3 wide with Malone and Krahula, with Guerin coming out on top and Krahula falling back through the field. Lap 29, Christopher would make slight contact with the outside wall coming out of turn 4, giving us our first contender for Save of the Year of 2017. Lap 36, the black magic of the netcode strikes again. This time its victims were Brian Yazik and Brandon Lincolnman. The collateral damage included Matthew Mercer, Chris Lanini, Jared Turnbull, Michael Peters, Frank Beiser, and Andrew Kinsella. Some were able to continue, but others were sidelined for the remainder of the race. A long green flag run meant green flag pit stops for many of the leaders. The strategy of pitting under an earlier yellow meant Bob Mikes and a motivated Chris Stouffer would duke it out for the lead. However, both would need to stop for fuel later in the race. With less than a quarter of the race to go, things began to get hairy, with drivers pushing the limits of their car's grip and the talent of those around them. Sean Ambrose's attempts to annex Patrick Taylor's real estate ended badly for the Canadian, though he escaped the worst of it as Vince Blumenthal got sucked into iRacing's unique endless spiral. On the final restart, Jason Galvin, who started from pit lane, took control. With a fantastic restart, he pulled away from James Krahula. Galvin, enjoying clean air for the first time that night, remained uncontested until turn 3 on the final lap, when Krahula took a lip to his inside but had to back out, allowing Jake Wright to pip him at the line for second. But the day would ultimately belong to Jason Galvin, who will go down in history as the winner of the first ever Lionheart Retro Series event. Next stop, Michigan International Speedway. For more information on the Lionheart Retro Series or the Lionheart IndyCar Series, go to LionheartRacingSeries.com. Tune in Thursday nights for all of the 80s racing action, broadcast live exclusively on GSRC.
The lights are off and away they go.
Extremely loose. He's managed to hold on and they get.
He missed the complete. That is crazy stuff.
Side Freitas is on the grass on the infield floor. He sliced through. He tags Richard Eck.
And good evening, race fans, and welcome to the Global Sim Racing Channel's broadcast of Round 2 of the new Lionheart Retro Series. Tonight's race will feature iRacing's classic Lotus 79 on a track that harkens back to the glory days of open-wheel oval racing, Michigan International Speedway. Hello, I'm Adam Young, and with me tonight in the booth is Tanner Sharp. In the director's chair, doing the tough job of making us look and sound good, is Joe Peak, and he'll be featuring the wonderful cameras of Dougie Beard. Good evening to you, Tanner. Tanner, many people nowadays think of Michigan mostly as a stock car track, but you may be surprised to know that its very first race, way back in 1968, was an open-wheel champ car race. Why don't you tell us a little bit about Michigan here?
Good evening to you too there, Adam. And I tell you what, Michigan International Speedway is one of the, if you want to go to a high-speed racetrack, this is the track to go to. You talk about that 1968, which was won by Ronnie Bucknam back then with 26 cars on the racetrack. That produced a lot of high racing speed action. Michigan's a 2-mile D-shaped oval with 18 degrees in the banking of the corner through turns 1 to 2 and 3 and 4. Michigan's a high speed, wide oval, and I tell you what, it can produce a lot of green flag racing.
You know, and Tanner, of course, before we go into the point standings after our first race at Homestead, why don't you also go ahead and give us a scoop on the series and that race here today?
Yes, sir. The Lotus 79 Retro IndyCar, Lionheart IndyCar Series, round 2 of 18. with the Lotus 79 tonight. Setups are fixed. They have been given the setup for tonight's race. 200 miles these guys will be driving. That's going to be 100 fast laps. There's going to be no fast repairs. 28% is the fuel load on these Lotus 79. That is going to be about approximately 2 to 3 pit stops, depending upon how many green flag laps we have tonight. The incident cap is you're disqualified with 12 points of 12 incident points, and add a 8x as well, and you can also lose championship points if you get up to those many incident points. Restarts are single file across the board, so every time we have a restart, it's going to be single file restarts, not double them up. And the weather tonight, 85 air temperature, which is the track temperature, 103 degrees. But the way this track is and how wide open you are, handling should not be too much of an issue.
That's right. Of course, those winds out of the north at about 2 miles an hour and a partly cloudy skies with that sun beating down on this surface, of course, is going to make for a pretty interesting day. Now, of course, if you were with us there just a couple weeks ago at Homestead with Sam and Tanner, you might have seen 43 cars on the grid at Homestead in the Lotus 79. An incredible turnout for this series in its inaugural race, at least under the Lionheart banner. Now, because of that, they've had to adjust how they were initially planning on doing the points. So if you happen to go to the Lionheart's website, this might look a little bit different than what you first saw. Of course, everything's updated on there now. So here is the current driver standings after the first round. Fellow broadcaster, real world broadcaster, Jason Galvin ended up with 61 points in the win at Homestead. Jake C. Wright, of course, he's running the championship number one from the previous incarnation of this series with Jimmy Eifling when he was running it over the previous course couple of years. James Kahula is 9 points back, sitting in third. Joe Branch running in fourth. And fifth place in the point standings, 14 points behind, is Ryan Otis. And of course, we're going to see here today how that's going to get shaken up, of course, with this wide open Michigan track. We've also got a team championship on the line. No Name Racing took the early lead here after round one as far as the team championship. AGR Motorsports sitting in second. Adrenaline Motorsports and Streamline Motorsports sitting in third and fourth. And probably, Tanner, my favorite team name is Team #Nailed It. They're sitting in fifth, at least here right now. And of course, we're going to talk about bonus points and everything else as we go through the day today. Now, Tanner, as I mentioned, you were here last time for the inaugural race with, of course, Sam, who helped keep my seat warm. And he's decided to actually drive today. But based on your experience at Homestead, what are a couple of things you're going to be watching today?
Well, I've gotten the great opportunity to head out into a practice session earlier today, and the biggest thing is when you come to Michigan, whether it's in a stock car or an open-wheeled, number one, it's drafting. You got to kind of utilize that draft to slingshot past your opponent. But be careful, and this is the step number 2, be careful on entry of the corner. You carry too much speed because of that draft on entry, the car pushes like crazy and you could push out to the outside wall. That is something you're going to have to watch out today. Number 3 is high speeds, of course, what we just discussed about. And number 4, don't beat yourself on pit road. You're going about 195 entering these corners, and you're getting down to about 186 miles an hour and trying to get onto pit road, and you can't get on the brakes too hard in these things, otherwise the car just flat out steps out on you, and you don't want that. So do not beat yourself up on pit road, because if you do, it can cost you the race.
Yeah, what you're seeing on your screen right now, of course, is not the actual race start. These guys are practicing the race start. I already see somebody on their lid in the back of the pack. But let's take an early opportunity to talk about Ed Tutzeweller with the Dragonfly Racing in-car cam, if we can. Just go ahead and show people what we're going to be showing here on board today with that Dragonfly Racing onboard camera, looking out from the roll loop right above Ed's helmet. And he'll be having our sponsored onboard camera here for today, pan it around. You know, we put modern cameras on these Lotus 79 cars, so he'll be able to give us some pretty good action. Of course, Ed right now, at least in this practice session, is running actually third, so he's going to be looking for a pretty good day today. It looks like he's going to be pretty quick in the draft. Now, I'm going to go ahead and throw you on the spot here, Tanner. I didn't put it in the script for a reason, but based on what you've seen at Homestead and based on what you've seen in practice, who is going to be your early favorite as far as watching today?
Oh boy, I tell you what, there's a number of drivers out there. You got Jason Galvin who won last week, and that was based upon patience too. You got to have patience in these Lotus Indy cars, and usually it's the Lionheart IndyCar Series regulars, maybe drivers like Big Joe and Jake Wright. I mean, he can go anywhere on the racetrack technically and find himself up there towards the front. George Anzaldo's another driver. I mean, there's so many favorites in this race. It's really hard to pick out a favorite on who specifically is going to win, because all these drivers are running pretty close lap times here, Adam. I mean, we are already seeing 37.2s just between the top three cars, and from 4th place all the way down to 14th place, they're all running 37.3s. So it's kind of like, I mean, flip of a coin, kind of like picking a winner for Daytona or Talladega. That's how much the draft really affects these races.
And of course, one of the deciding things at Homestead last week was caution in the middle of the pit cycle. And that's one thing that helped Jason Galvin get up front. What are you expecting as far as cautions and the like here today? Do you think we're going to see a lot, or do you think we're going to see few with the wide open track?
Well, I mean, I like to say we could see a lot of cautions, but with a big wide open track like Michigan is, and you can give each other plenty of room, I mean, these guys, it'll be pretty much less cautions than Homestead. Homestead Miami Speedway has like 24 degrees of banking, and that's a 1.5 mile racetrack. Michigan is a 2-mile D-shaped oval with 18 degrees of banking, and you can go 3-4 wide around this thing and give each other plenty of room. So I'm actually really hoping for green flag racing today, and if it does, it's going to play out into really good pit strategy.
Yeah, one thing that's worth mentioning here too is practice is getting ready to come to an end. We're getting ready to start qualifying. Is with the series rules, the white line and the yellow line is out of bounds until the last lap, when only the front stretch, the inside of the front stretch becomes inbounds on the final lap coming to the line. So if these guys do decide to take it 4 or 5 wide, they're going to have to be careful of those out of bounds lines. And of course, qualifying, getting ready to start, these guys are going to get 2 laps at speed here for today in a quick 5-minute session, so everybody's going to be pulling out here real quick. There's a familiar name on GSRC, Pierre Daigle. He is running that yellow old school Renault Goodyear car. That's going to be one thing too, that a lot of the times with these retro series that are out there, and especially I think you're going to see it a lot with the Lionheart series, you're going to see a lot of retro paint schemes, and a lot of these are pretty cool to watch, so you'll be seeing them quite a bit here on the broadcast. What was your favorite last week, or even this week, that you've seen here so far, Tanner?
I haven't really taken the chance yet to look at all the paint schemes this week, but I liked I think it was Jason Galvin that drove them at the Menards paint scheme last week. I thought that was really cool. There is a Budweiser scheme out there. Just got to find out who that is. There's the Menards paint scheme. That is Jason Galvin. There we go. I really like that. That is really cool. I have a Menards in my local area, and just looking at that is just awesome. So the Menards has become one of my favorites on track. And I tell you what here, Adam, my experience in these cars when I was driving, when you race a stock car, you can't go all the way on the bottom because the car just gets all snappy loose on you. Here in the Lotus 79, you can run anywhere you want. And the crazy thing about it is, when you're running by yourself like this, the longer you go, the faster you're putting up the lap times. It's crazy, but it's true. And I've also realized that the higher you run, the more speed you can get off on the guy on the inside. So it's going to produce some wide open, fast pace, ever so close, ever so fast racing.
Yeah, and I wanted to try to say it while we still had the Menards car up, but I believe that's similar to the scheme that Tony Stewart used to run when he was on there, but I also think it's similar to the scheme, too, that Scott Brayton, he was running when he tragically lost his life at the Indy 500 practice back in 1996. So if we get Jason up here, we'll have to ask him if that's a tribute to that or maybe Tony Stewart. But of course, qualifying is continuing. Looking at the early leaderboard, man, when we go through these times here on the grid, Tanner, in a few minutes, we're going to be looking at some awfully close time. Trevor Malone, though, Trevor set the early pace at Homestead, just was really able to stay up front during most part of the race. He's leading qualifying right now at a 37.566, but the rest of the guys aren't too far behind him.
Yeah, and Trevor Malone last 2 weeks ago at the Homestead Miami Speedway, when he did sit on the pole, drivers tried taking it away from him, but he didn't give up. He wanted to snatch that race lead right on back, right away. And James Krahula, who just sits right now on top of the leaderboard, was one of those drivers that was battling with Trevor Malone. So, I mean, it's going to be really consistent, fast-paced racing. There's going to be drivers going to try to take the lead from each other. Some drivers are going to try to protect their spot. And tell you what, there, Adam, you said about picking favorites. Like I said, it's hard to pick a favorite because James Krahula, he's on top of the board right now, and he just ran his fastest time. Actually, he did not run the fastest time, but he was 22nd in practice, and now Big Joe just went up to the second place, and he was 14th in practice. So it's really kind of hard to put a finger on, who's the best car out there, because they're going to be flat out utilizing that draft. It's going to be looking like pack racing at Daytona and Talladega.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, I expect we're going to see quite a bit of that, especially with this given air hole as these cars punch in the air. So that's going to be something to watch. Of course, qualifying here got about a minute 20 left. Right there on your screen, you're looking at the 35 car Rory Collins with that baby blue paint scheme. Yeah, I mean, I'm anticipating a fun race here from these guys.
Oh, yeah, definitely. I mean, there's a big number of drivers here tonight, and 36, 37, 38 drivers so far that I count that are going to be starting this event. And we had 43 at Homestead, but it's still a really good turnout for the Retro Series, and seeing some retro paint schemes on the racetrack. I assume they're retro paint schemes. It's going to be one big fun race to watch here at Homestead, and multi-groove racing is going to be the biggest thing that any kind of race fan likes to watch, whether you like IndyCar or whether you like NASCAR. You like the big pack racing, drivers going head-to-head to one another.
Yeah, and I think we got about 30 seconds here left of officially qualifying, but everybody, for the most part, I believe, has qualified, has put in their laps. So let's go ahead and talk the grid. So starting up front, James Krahula. He's going to go ahead and try to set the early pace once again, 37.539. And Big Joe Hassard along outside of him, only 7 thousandths of a second behind.
Yeah, just thousandths of a second there, Adam. And that I mean, those lap times are really close. But usually when qualifying starts, reading the grid here, James Krahula on top of the board. Big Joe Hazard in second, Michael Goodman in third, Trevor Malone in fourth, and Andrew Kinsella, who I think is going to be a dark horse for tonight's race win, will round out the top five. Chris Lanny will start in sixth, Dan Gurin in seventh, Jason Galvin in eighth, Patrick Taylor in ninth, and George Enzaldo will round out your top 10.
Yeah, and go ahead and going over to 11th on the grid. Bob Mikes is sitting there. Joe Branch starting in 12th. Bradley Walters on the inside of row 7. Outside of row 7, Dustin Wardlow. Jake C. Wright, a little bit further back than Jake is probably accustomed to starting these races, but I have a feeling he's going to find his way up front pretty quick. Tony Schuin starting in 16th, outside of row 8. Inside of row 9, Brian Greeley. David Eltman starting alongside him, then Rory Collins and James Paulson.
And outside the top 20 is Racing Kangaroo Gray, which is Michael Gray, starting 21st tonight. Chris Stouffer, 22nd on the board. Ed Tutwiler, roll off 23rd. Matthew Mercer, 24th. Travis Jaggerliner, roll off 25th. Our very own Samuel Ryman will roll off 26th. Brennan Hubbard will roll off 27th. J.M. Cormier starts 28th. Robert Blowen will roll out 29th. And Michael Peters rounds out the top 30.
Yeah, so we're going back into the field. Michael Lawler starting in 31st, followed by Stephen Pauly on the outside of row 16. Pierre Daigle starting in 33rd. Scott Bolster starting alongside him. Frank Beezer in the inside of row 18, 35th position. 36th position, Jesse Vincent, Jack Bogan, and Tyler Turnbull all did not set times. So there we are with 38 cars to start this race.
Tell you what, Adam, and we haven't even taken a green flag yet, and we're up here in the booth. I already have butterflies. I don't know about you, but usually I get those butterflies in a big race like this. You never know what's going to happen, but just as a race fan and a commentator in the booth, I got the butterflies already.
Yeah, I think that's going to be something to see here. And, of course, we're looking at Trevor Malone starting fourth tonight, and we're going to have to see him if he's going to be able to try to get up to the front once again early. So, I mean, and what we saw in the practice start, too, I mean, the start's going to be really determine a lot. I mean, the guys, that's going to be probably one of the times that they're closest together as far as in one big pack. What I expect to see happen is they'll break up into packs, and that's when you'll see your 3 wide and 4 wide, but we might have a distinct 1 or 2. So that's going to be something, of course, that we'll keep an eye on as well. Cars are rolling with that Ford Mustang pace car right now going between turns 1 and turns 2. Cars will be on the backstretch here before too long, and we'll be taking the green flag not much longer after than that.
Yep, and these guys are going to unleash the beasts. And I like to kind of call this series the Xfinity series of Lionheart. They don't produce the much speed like the DW12s, but these are still bad fast when you're going about 185 to 195 miles an hour around this place. And I just can't wait to unleash them, see what's going to produce, who's going to go 3 wide, who's going to try to lay back to, to save their stuff. I mean, everybody's got their own strategy, but anything can happen.
Yeah, it really can. As you see now, the car is heading into turn 3. Lights, of course, off on the pace car. So, we'll see who's going to lead the first lap. Will it be James Kahula? Will it be Big Joe Hassert? Maybe Michael Goodman or Trevor Malone could try to sneak in from row 2. And we're going to get ready to find out here as these cars are heading toward the green and heading toward the green quick.
Headed towards the green, that pace car heading down pit road. James Grahula can let him off anytime that he wishes. Here we go, green flag racing at the Michigan International Speedway for the Retro Lionheart IndyCar Series.
Yeah, so far so good, going clean down into turn 1. Looking at the early leader is going to be James Grahula. He's able to get that jump start, but you got Big Joe Hassert's going to try to fight back on him on the outside as they head down to the backstretch, and you're already seeing those cars getting hungry a little bit behind him. Of course, Big Joe Hassert's in that gray Petronas car out there along with James Grahula on the inside of him in that burgundy car. Behind them is Michael Goodman right now in sole possession of third. Go ahead and scoop ahead here, and also right behind him is Trevor Malone. Andrew Kinsella is rounding out your top 5, but I have a feeling that top 5 is getting ready to get jumbled. Those guys are looking pretty hungry behind them.
Tell you what, talk about getting hungry. The top 10 guys are getting hungry. Back here where George Anzalder was, they were 3 wide coming off turn 4. They get themselves sorted out. They're still kind of going 3 wide here and there. But I tell you what, they were getting hungry for position early going.
That's right. And, of course, we were talking earlier about pit stops and what we could expect as far as those pit stops here for today. You'll be looking at that pit window probably about 37, 38 laps. So these guys have a little while before they've got to worry about pitting, even with tanks that are only 28% full. So with that, we already have that battle for the lead going once again with James Grahula and also Big Joe Hassert. Big Joe Hassert looks like he's going to lose a little ground going into turn 1. He's going to fall back into the clutches possibly of Jason Galvin back there now in 5th. Dan Guerin on the inside of that kind of, I guess, row 2 already. So his right now is the last time at the line was 3rd position. It looks like he's going to try to take that kind of run in the middle line around the track. On the outside of him right now still Trevor Malone kind of taking a slightly higher line than that. Maybe go single file here. No hopes there. They are not going to go single file down the front stretch. Once again, Big Joe Hassert looking on the outside of James Grahula.
Man, believe it or not, when I was running in the practice session, here they go. We might go 3 wide here for about 3rd place here pretty soon here, maybe for the race lead. We got a car way high above there. That is Dan Guerin on the higher side. He is going to take that 2nd spot away from Big Joe Hassert. Big Joe Hassert lost about 2 spots right there.
Yeah.
Or not Joe.
That's good. Yeah. Joe Hassert's going to take over the lead here, but he's going to be fighting now with Dan Guerin on the outside of him. Kind of running that little seam that's on the racetrack there. And is that going to be Trevor Malone? He's thinking about trying to take it 3 wide here going into 1. Will he stay with that move, or is he going to let off? He's going to go ahead and let off and let both Dan Guerin and Big Joe Hassert have the line here. Joe Hassert drifts a little high, almost into Dan Guerin, gets off the gas just a touch. That might allows him to lose 2nd to Trevor Malone, and then you got Jason Galvin, your winner last week, already sitting there in 4th position now on track.
Yeah, that battle's still going on for second place, but it looks like Big Joe Hazard on the exit of the corner kind of drifts up. I just wonder if the draft has a lot to do with that. I believe it does. So Big Joe Hazard kind of falling back just a little bit. Currently now in fourth place. We do got a battle for the race lead, though, on that higher line. Trevor Malone.
Yeah, Trevor right now looking very strong here early on. Dan Guerin is going to try to drift up right in front of him, try to break that momentum up a little as they're getting ready to head into 3. Now, you don't want to be careful, a little bit careful doing that. Of course, later on in the race, people might not give you the room that you want in order to try to pull that off. But right now, they're going to be kind of running nose to tail as Trevor Malone, once again, tries to prove me wrong. He's going to go ahead and dive to the inside as they go down to the stripe. And I do believe Dan Guerin was able to hold on to the race lead that last lap, but only by 9,000ths of a second. Now Trevor Malone, though, going into 1 is going to take sole possession of first, and with Jason Galvin trying to follow in his tire tracks, but he's going to go ahead and settle into 3rd behind Dan Guerin.
And as a driver, I really like that higher line, the higher line that Big Joe Hazard was riding earlier. Jason Galvin's actually run my line that I would love to run up there, you know, and utilizing that draft, get that good speed coming off the exit of the corner. Trevor Malone out front, going to lead this time by at the stripes. With Dan Guerin in second, he's going to try to suck up right behind him, go to the high side. And that's a good thing he's using a high side. He doesn't want to stay in that draft because he will push tight on entry.
Yeah, definitely. So, I mean, he's going to be careful about that. And that's kind of one of those things. You know, I mean, I know we're quite a ways away from here. I mean, we're still quite a ways away from even the first pit stop. But if it comes down to it, at the end of this race, where do you want to be? Do you want to be second or third, or do you want to be in first, knowing that those guys are going to be understeering behind you?
Oh man, honestly, I would be in the top 5 and with about maybe 20 laps to go, and if I'm close to the drivers, to the race leaders, try to get on up there, but try not to take the lead too early because they can come up with that draft and get such a huge run on you. You might, oh man, it looks like Jason Galvin pushed up the racetrack there off of turn number 2. That, I mean, allowed Big Joe to really kind of back off the gas just a little bit to come a little break.
Yeah, definitely. So Trevor Malone looks like things might try to settle down here just a little bit, and you know, going that way. Might need to go back, and I'll go back here in a second, try to figure out what can happen. But let's go take a look at Ed Tutwiler. He's in that Dragonfly Racing onboard camera, and he's got clean track in front of him right now. So we're going to have to take a look at what's going on. But, you know, with nobody really in front of or behind him right now, he's kind of out there driving by himself. So if nothing did happen, could this be a strategy play by Ed? Of course, we saw that he was one of the quicker cars in practice. So, yeah, he might just be trying to bide his time until his first caution. So let's go ahead and look at some other cars here. Got battles all over the place. In fact, let's go ahead and if we can, let's jump on board Dustin Wardlow, car number 29, and just take a look at this hornet's nest that's in front of him right now. Man, cars everywhere on this track trying to find every little bit of racing room that they can. He's sitting there trying to cut it close, on the outside line with Jake C. Wright. Jake C. Wright right now running in 14th position. He might even try to lose another spot here to Michael Gray. Michael Gray running in the 888 car. Man, it's definitely one of those races where if you're running in the middle of the pack, your heart's probably beating a little bit faster than what it otherwise would.
Yeah, but I mean, on this onboard right here with Dan Wardlow, I mean, look how much room these guys are really giving one another. I mean, they're running 2 distinctive lines on the bottom side of the racetrack, or middle groove side of the racetrack, and the very high line. They're giving each other so much room to produce this kind of racing at them. Oh, whoa! That got scary. And there's caution on the racetrack for the first time today.
Let's see if we can find the cause of that caution. That was definitely what you would consider a heart attack moment there. Let's see, it's Stephen Pauly sitting on the backstretch getting going, and I think I saw his car crabbing a little bit, so we're going to go back and take a look to see what exactly happened to Stephen Pauly.
Yeah, we'll just have to see what happens.
Spin on well, Stephen Pauly's there bouncing along the wall. There's another car back there in turn 2 as well. So is there contact to get those cars to spin, or was it wreck avoidance? Let's see here as we look from the blimp, or the helicopter rather.
Tag that outside wall. That may have played a lot with. Oh, I wonder if he really made contact with him, unless that was just net code.
Yeah, I think Stephen Pauly was kind of a victim of circumstance there with the car that was wrecking in front of him, and fortunately, my iRacing simulators are kind of arguing with me just a little bit. But I'm trying to figure out who that other car was.
Hobart,
yeah, it was Hobart. Hobart ended up having contact. He ended up locking wheels with Tyler Turnbull, and that's what ended up sending Brendan Hobart, into the wall. Slapped the wall pretty good, and ultimately ended up with Stephen Pauly with coming down the track to avoid him. Ended up slapping wheels with Michael Lawler. I mean, no fault of either of those guys. They were trying to avoid the accident in front of them, but I think Stephen Pauly ended up getting the worst end of that deal. Of course, with these big tires, when you slap the wall like that, sometimes it's going to knock things askew.
Yeah, everybody, there's a lot of cars still staying out on the racetrack here, Adam. I'm seeing Joe Branch, Chris Stouffer, Michael Goodman on pit road, Dustin Wardlow, Patrick Taylor, Bradley Walters, a lot of mid-pack drivers entering pit road. That might be a kind of a good thing to get some 4 fresh tires on that thing, fill that thing up with some fuel, but a lot of drivers are going to stay out. I'm going to count at least about maybe 16, 17 drivers are going to stay out on the racetrack.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I mean, just kind of eyeballing it, it looks like about 13th on back has come into pit road. And, you bring up tires and taking 4 fresh Goodyear tires. How big is a tire wear going to play a role, do you think, later on in these runs?
I don't think they're going to play too much of a big a factor. I took a long green flag run in the practice session, and I wasn't really noticing a difference by myself on the racetrack with tire wear. But when you're in the draft with somebody, the car pushes worse as the run goes on. That's if you're in the draft. So you really got to be careful with that. And I really think in this series, the way these cars are handling around this joint, I think track position is going to be a little more important than the tire wear.
Well, after that, and everything that happened with the yellow coming out, and, Jason Galvin, last week's winner, is now in first place behind that Mustang pace car with the lights still on. We'll see if the lights come off this time around. Trevor Malone sitting right now in second. Actually, let's go ahead and just see what happens with the pace car here real quick. All right, lights are going to come off. Let's go ahead and take a quick look here. We'll go through the top 10. Jason Galvin running right now in first. Trevor Malone in second. Dan Guerin running right now in third. Big Joe Hassert running in fourth. James Grahula in fifth. You can see that these guys will probably be right back all together once we go back to green. Bog Mike's running in sixth position. Chris Lanini running right now in seventh. George Inzaldo. Of course, big thanks to George for helping organize this series. He's running right now in eighth. Andrew Kinsella running in ninth position, and Tony Schoen running in 10th. And I know I said top 10. Let's go one more back to the driver that is running that championship number 1 from the previous incarnation of the series, Jake C. Wright. Right now, I think he stayed out as far as the pit stop, so that helped him get a couple of cars up in track position. Jake Wright is one of those guys that I fully expect to be closer to the front at the end of this race. That's a kid that knows how to drive, and he knows how to put himself in a position here closer to the end.
I mean, when it comes to any kind of series, one of the best road course drivers I've seen on iRacing. I know there's a lot of good ones on there, but I've watched Jake Wright turn some laps on road courses, and man, he is a beast.
Well, we're getting ready to come back to green flag here. You notice it is single file restarts as Jason Galvin's going to go ahead and take that green flag, going underneath the scoring stand, hitting that stripe and getting onto the gas. He's going to try to get away as far as he can from the likes of Trevor Malone. Actually gets a pretty decent jump here, but as you know, with that draft, he should be able to suck right back up to that rear wing of Jason Galvin.
Big time single file racing, but I tell you what, the driver that's making moves right away on the restart was Jake Wright. He got underneath Tony Schoen, who was showing after gaining 6 spots since the drop of the green flag, and he just got overtaken by Jake Wright, who moves up, and we got a battle for second place that almost turned into contact.
Yeah, running back there right now with Trevor Malone and Dan Guerin. They get a little close together. You kind of see the different lines. All three of those guys are running, and right behind them in fourth is Big Joe Hassett. This has been the first time all day we haven't been able to fit in about 7 or 8 cars right up at the top frame. And looking at the front, man, things get a little interesting real quick up there. Dan Guerin right now just kind of biding his time. He's in what we like to call the popcorn position, kind of sitting there in third just in case something happens to those two. But even then, I think he's getting a little hungry here. He's going to be looking on the outside of Trevor Malone, coming down the front stretch, tucks back in line. He's going to try to use a little bit of the draft. And there he goes. They're going to try to make this thing 3 wide going into 1. You see Trevor Malone trying to use a little side draft off Jason Galvin. Jason Galvin should be able to hold his line here. No, Jason Galvin lifts just a little bit. Trevor Malone's going to be able to rock it to the front. And now Jason Galvin's going to have to be careful not to lose second position to Dan Guerin. Oh no, Dan Guerin should be able to get it here as well.
Oh, that draft may play a big part, but I tell you what, Trevor Malone actually set that up to take the race lead about 2 laps before he took it, man. He was entering high and then exited low, utilizing that draft on the straightaways. It really helped him. And Dan Guerin's going to go for the race lead, try to do it on the outside line, and that's been done very well today by these drivers.
Yeah, and of course, it's one of those things, though, that kind of like, and I hate to say this, I mean, we'll see if it takes a little bit of a roll here deeper into the fuel run, but that outside line, you might need a little bit of help to be able to pull that move off. But you do see kind of an outside line trying to form with the likes of Jason Galvin back there right now running in third. Joe Hassett was kind of trying to play a little bit with that top line, but I think he's just kind of right now just kind of watching and seeing what's going to happen here. Way back right now in 5th position is
3 wide.
There we go. We're going 3 wide. They're trying. And Jason Galvin's going to think better of it and let it go. Behind these guys here real quick, it was a battle. Didn't shape up. Bob Mike's running in 5th. James Kahula running in 6th. We're going to have to keep an eye on those guys here before too long as well. And you can see the cars, they're starting to catch up to these guys. This entire group is starting to catch that pack of lead 4 cars with as hard as that they are racing up at the front of this race right now. So I have a feeling that we're going to be able to get back in here with another big pack of maybe 9, 10, maybe even 12 cars back there. Is the harder they race, of course, the slower they're going to go, and you're seeing the difference right now.
Yep, and the more you get, and the more drivers you bring in, the more difficult the racing can be, and that's just a big pack of cars in one big old draft, and cars can start to push up. And a lot of the drivers would tell you they'd rather battle with one car than all cars, but some drivers would also say they like to battle with all the cars, but that can also unfortunately produce a big mess.
It definitely can. Some of these guys back here are trying to run a little bit more single file, and that's kind of helping them. But you see the battle up front continues right now with side-by-side racing between Dan Guerin, Trevor Malone, Jason Galvin still up there too. Joe Hassett gets a big run on Jason Galvin. Actually, I think had to lift off the gas a little bit to keep from running into his left rear tire.
Yeah, definitely. Man, it just can get tight just like that, and we still got that battle for the race lead. Dan Guerin on that high side trying to work it. Now, if he gets down and sucks up to that draft, which he is not going to, he's actually using a little side draft to get to that right rear tire back there, using the air to get around another driver on the outside line, and that just produces some awesome racing. Plus, also, you do get help from the backside driver, which is Jason Galvin.
That's right, and I think out of these guys right now in the top 4, Joe Hassert's kind of reading everything. Whoa, Jason Galvin makes an aggressive move, goes to the bottom of the racetrack. He's going to try taking this thing 3 wide for the lead. He's going to go from 3rd to possibly 1st here if he's able to get a good run off 4, heading down the tribal front stretch. Let's see. We're looking at Trevor Malone fighting back on the outside.
To the outside wall, 3 wide to the line. Holy cow.
If he didn't scrape that wall, he was awfully close to it.
Oh, almost contact between Jason Galvin and Trevor Malone. Almost. I don't know if they made contact. I think it was just very close.
Yeah, that's going to be something, too, that these guys are going to have to be careful. You got to realize we still got a long way to go, these guys right now. Oof, yeah, that was almost a big accident there. I went back and looked at it. Only lap 24 here. Now, some of these leaders, they're going to have to be starting to think about pitting here in about the next 10 to 15 laps. So, Do you try to stretch the fuel, or do you try to make the pass on pit road as if it were? What do you think would be the strategy here? Do you try to come in with some help, or do you try to come in alone and see if you can run a faster lap time or two and not have to worry about traffic on pit road?
Man, that's a very tough call to make. I guess it all comes down to it on how the car is handling for you. Are you performing better without the draft or with the draft? And sometimes drivers like to come down alone. That way, there isn't a big mishap on the entry of entry of pit road. So, we almost got a collision back here for about 7th place back here.
Yeah. Meanwhile, the battle for the lead's continuing on. Once again, 3 wide. They've been 3 wide now for a little while. Michigan big and wide, known for this type of racing. And I think Jason Galvin, you've noticed that the last couple times he's taken it in that deep into one, he's starting to drift up a little bit. Could tire wear or tire temperatures, probably more than anything, with driving that fairly low line aggressively. I wonder if that's starting to catch up with Jason a little bit. Now he's going to have to fight for third with Big Joe Hassert going around the outside of Jason Galvin. Jason Galvin's going to have his fans full of Bob Mikes here.
Kind of looking at the top 7 cars here, Adam, and I'm really understanding that outside line is probably going to be the line to really go around another driver. Jason Galvin is really paying the price on that bottom side of the racetrack. It is just not producing for him on the exit part of the racetrack, which that is turn 2 and turn 4, because right now he's going to get passed by 2 cars just in one straightaway.
Yeah, and right now this lead pack, it's kind of an extended lead pack, but what you might consider the lead pack right now is 12 cars. That's what Racing Up Front did. It brought all these cars back together. We were talking about him earlier as well. Jake C. Wright right now running in 7th position, so it ended up being the right move for him not to come back in. He's picking these guys off one by one right now. Jason Galvin has fallen back to 6th when he was up in the lead just a few minutes ago, but his line is starting to look a little bit better as well. So maybe he's working on getting those tires cooled back off. He's going to take another run at it, but that could be lessons learned for later on in this race, so he might still be a threat yet. Now, Dan Guerin right now on the outside, once again, of Trevor Malone. Trevor Malone's going to be able to hold him off here as they go to the line. He's going to lead another lap, but Dan Guerin does have a little bit more speed than him on the outside. That's one of the advantages of the outside line, being able to carry that speed a little bit more as they go into one. Yeah, we'll see. Dan Guerin, I think, is going to try to slip in behind Trevor Malone here. Maybe use that draft to get a really good runoff, too, as they head down this long backstretch.
I got to bring this up, Adam. Since the restarts, the cars that have pitted have not made really not much any ground. The most ground I'm looking at currently is not even a position. The freshest guy on 4 fresh tires is Joe Branch, and he's all the way back.
Yellow flag on the racetrack.
Uh-oh. Second caution of the day.
Yeah, I'm looking at Michael Lawler here. Going down to backstretch, I think he had something happen as far as might have been some net code there. He was racing with Ed Tutwiler and ended up throwing him into the outside wall there.
Might be a good Fire Dragon Racing onboard right there. Oh, I tell you what, man, those tires made contact and it just spun Michael Lawler right around.
Yeah, that's definitely not one of those ones that we're going to place blame on. I have a feeling that Michael Lawler thought he had a little bit more room than what the simulator thought he did. Once that contact was made, he ended up getting the worst end of that. So unfortunately for him, pretty significant contact into that outside backstretch wall. So now the question is, will the leaders come down pit road here? We're going to get ready to find out.
Yeah, they're looking at coming down pit road right now here, Adam, and every single car I'm looking at is coming down pit road. And this was a good thing that caution came out for the race leaders. The drivers that pitted last caution, they didn't really benefit anything by pitting. The fastest car was running in 17th. So here we go, everybody down pit road on the right-hand side of pit road. Now I assume everybody's going to take 4 tires. That's going to be the same amount of taking fuel, so about a good maybe 5, 6, 7 second pit stop.
Of course,
Big Joe missed his.
And that's going to be costly with as much as these cars are running. Trevor Malone already back on the track. He's going to lose a couple of spots because of missing it. Trevor Malone's going to get back out in front with the race lead. He will retain it here. Actually, we got a couple cars out front that stayed out.
Jake Wright, man, he pitted and he gained several spots. He won he came out third on the exit of pit road, and we do have cars that stayed out.
Yeah. The lead of this race, if they don't come in the next time around, it'll be David Altman. Hey, and a guy that kept my seat warm for me last week, Samuel Raymond. Good run for Samuel. He's staying in second, so it might be a track position play here from those two gentlemen. We're going to have to see, but we are going to see after a quick break. We'll be right back. Alrighty, well, you saw Samuel Raymond come down pit road. That's going to leave David Altman at the front of this field. Lights are off on the pace car. We will be going green this time by with the cars once again on a single file restart. Trevor Malone's going to be in second. Dan Guerin restarting in third. Jake Wright getting a lot of positions. Going to be restarting in fourth, and Jason Galvin behind him in fifth position. So David Altman staying out. Strategy play could be a big deal for him if he's able to do something with it here. What he's going to be banking on is probably another quick yellow. But he's one of the guys that pitted earlier on. So now the question becomes, is he going to be able to stay up and around the lead pack here as we come to green? Green flag getting ready to come out for David Altman. David Altman taking him down real slow. He's going to jump on the gas from there, try to get as big of a jump as he can. Kind of leads to a little bit of a stack up about 10, 12 cars back. And he gets a really big jump, though, going on Trevor Malone. Trevor Malone is running in second, but already you're looking at Jake Wright making a move. He's going to go ahead and try to look for third position here alongside Dan Guerin. Jake Wright on the inside as they're heading down the backstretch. Looks like Dan Guerin's going to be able to get the good run. Jake Wright slips back in behind. He's going to go ahead and try to use the draft, but Dan Guerin's going to go ahead and try to already take a look at Trevor Malone back there. Meanwhile, David Altman still has a pretty decent lead up at the front, about 0.4 of a second, but I don't think it's going to stay that far for very long here. Tanner, sorry, as they get ready to head down into turn one.
Yeah, and that jumping out like that may have been a really good idea to do that, but holy moly, cars around James Paulson, man, they were aggressive since the drop of that restart there. They were 3 wide entering turn number 1, and they're all sorted out now, but holy moly, they are all over each other.
Yeah, lots of racing going on all through this pack. In fact, right now, I think only the front 5 cars right now are probably the only ones that are single file. But here comes Trevor Malone. He's already looking on the outside of David Altman. Pass for the lead, possibly going into 1 here, as you got Dan Guerin on the outside as well. David Altman drives the car in there. I think he let off the gas a little bit, and that's going to allow him to slip back probably to 5th before everything's said and done. I think Jason Galvin's going to be able to get around him. He might have decided that discretion is a better part of valor. I'm going to seep in behind the back of this lead pack and just see what happens. But that resumes the big battle for the lead. Has been going on for quite a while with Dan Guerin and Trevor Malone. Trevor Malone has the distinct advantage right now. Tanner?
Yeah, good catch by David Altman. He actually clipped the apron down there in 3 and 4. That kind of caused his car to push up just a tick, but he caught it, and right now he's riding just fine, solidly in 5th place. If he can catch an early caution, this was tremendous track position for him to pick up. He's got a big gap from where Big Joe Hazard is right now, and right now Altman going for another spot on Jake Wright. Maybe he's just kind of playing in that draft just a little bit, kind of just sticking with the lead lap guys and hope for that caution.
Yeah, and 1.2 to make that with him staying out is points. You do get bonus points leading laps in this series. In fact, you actually get, I am checking my notes here, making sure I got it right, you actually do get 1 bonus point for leading a lap. So that could be very important to David Altman's season if it comes down to it. Of course, right now, Trevor Malone trying to go for the extra point as well for leading the most laps. So far, he has led the most laps here tonight, is fighting alongside Dan Guerin and Jason Galvin for most of it. And look who's coming back, storming back from 3rd position, looking to make a play again is Jason Galvin. And then behind them, you've got David Altman still, and then Jake C. Wright also back there as well. We're going to have to see here. Trevor Malone, he's going to be holding on the inside here as he comes to the stripe, leads another lap, but here comes Dan Guerin in the middle, and now, once again, Jason Galvin on the outside. Everybody kind of spreads out a little bit here. Jason Galvin's going to dive to the inside because he sees David Altman back there and realizes he's got to defend that position now. But now Jason Galvin's going to make an aggressive move. They're going to leave Trevor Malone in the middle this time as they go into turn 3. How's that going to work out? Well, it's going to work out with Jason Galvin sliding, doing a little slide job on Trevor Malone, going into the lead. That lead's not going to last very long. Trevor Malone's probably going to take it back here before the stripe, and Dan Guerin's coming in as well.
Look at this. Once again, dogfight for that race lead, 3 wide. I don't know how many times these guys have been pulling it off. I lost count. But it looked like Dan Guerin tried going 3 wide, had to back it off just a little bit. Now he's kind of pushing tight. David Altman, he also as well pushed a little tight. But that battle for that race lead still being aggressively contested down into turn number 3. Malone and Galvin. These are the 2 drivers that battled it out, I believe, last week at the Homestead Miami Speedway. Cautions played a big factor in that race result. But these guys are all over each other. There's a lot of track room to do it. It's such a great race.
Well, and because we've already mentioned the other 2 bonus points things, we should also mention you do get a bonus point in this series for winning the pole. You also get a bonus point for having an incident-free race. So Trevor Malone, right now, he was your pole sitter. He's obviously led a lap. He's trying to lead the most laps. That's 3 right there. And, of course, he's also trying to go for the incident-free race and get the maximum of 4 bonus points out of today. And he, right now, looks to be in a good position to do that. But he's got to take care of the car, and he's been able to do that as well so far. David Altman starting to look a little hungry racing around these guys. He's looking at the inside of Dan Guerin. Jason Galvin makes an aggressive move to try to keep Dan Guerin back behind him, but they're going to go ahead and take it 3 wide. Will David Altman thinking about 4 wide? No. David Altman's going to think better of it. He's going to back off a little bit. He's going to hold the inside line going down to 1. And once again, Tanner, as these guys continue to race aggressive at the front of this pack, guess what that is doing?
It is bringing everybody forward. Drivers like Jake Wright, Big Joe Hazard, pole sitter James Krahula, it's bringing them forward. And the more cars in the mix, the more it could possibly spell out trouble.
Yeah, I made a mistake there when I said Trevor Malone was your pole sitter. No, it was, in fact, James Krahula. I was looking at the wrong standings. My apologies on that one. So, with that, Trevor Malone is trying to bring home the 3 bonus points that he can here for today. So, good catch on that there, Tanner. Of course, right now, the aggressive racing continues right up front. And I say aggressive like it's a bad thing. No, it's a very good thing. These guys are giving each other plenty of room. This is the kind of racing that Michigan allows. They are trading spots, and they are really going at it hard in a really good way as well. Just a testament to the top-notch drivers that are in the Lionheart Racing Series and all 3 divisions of the Lionheart Racing Series. Trevor Malone's going to lead again another lap, but another lap with Dan Guerin on the outside of him. Jason Galvin settling in a 3rd for the moment. Jake C. Wright right now running in 4th. David Altman in 5th. I really, Tanner, I don't feel like this battle up front is going to calm down here anytime soon. So if you can keep an eye up there, yell at me if something happens. But let's go ahead and talk about some of the drivers from 5th on back here real quick. We're going to go and work our way back through the field. Start with, of course, Jake Wright. You see him sitting there in 4th. You have David Altman right now sitting in 5th back behind him. David Altman's club is International. We're going to have to find out for sure where David Altman is located at here at some point. And right back behind them right now, wow, big pack of guys running 2 abreast for 2 rows back. And you're looking at Big Joe Hassert involved in that little mumbo jumbo right there. Bob Mike's on the outside of him. Bob Mike's going to get a good run, take over that position.
Man, Big Joe pushed tight.
He really did. That could have been a close one there. Chris Stouffer right there. He takes the position from Joe Hassert. He's looking now on the inside of Bob Mike. So racing continues on back with these guys as well. Another car that I just saw get tight running back in 10th position, Joe Branch. And he drifted up the track just a little bit right in front of the likes of Chris Lanini. He's back there looking hungry as well. James Krahula is back in this mess as well. So just sitting just outside the top 10 right now. So in 11th position. We go a little bit back behind him. You're going to find yourself with Andrew Kinsella. He's running in 12th. He's going to be fighting off a hungry Matthew Mercer running that blue and white Wrangler machine. He's going to be trying to look to the inside here of 3, but he's got his hands full right now with Michael Gray in that green and white 888 car back there as well, but Matthew Mercer gets a little tight. It's going to fall back behind him. Scott Bolster running, hey, take a look at Scott Bolster running that old school green and white skull scheme with the Skull Bandit right there on the nose. Of course, I don't think he's going to be running the old Harry Gant high NASCAR line anytime soon, not Lotus 79 anyway, but anytime I see a Skull car, that's who I think of as old Harry Gant driving number 33 in the old Cup Series. James Paulson in the STP colors in that petty blue and petty red, running in the 38 car here today. He's right now sitting in 16th position. 17th position, league organizer George Anzaldo with that baby blue paint scheme running number 6. Pierre Daigle's back there as well. He is running that Renault car. We talked about him a little bit at qualifying. I love that scheme. I love the old school scheme. Very simple, very straightforward, but at the same time, it stands out and it pops out in your eye. Tyler Turnbull right behind them. He's running in 19th position. Robert Blewett back there. That's a name we haven't talked about at all here for today, running in the 77 car. Right now, his speed, wonder how fast he's going. He's going about 195 miles an hour going down the backstretch as they go flying off into turn 3. Behind him is Bradley Walters sitting in the 21st position in car number 56. And another little battle going on with Patrick Taylor back there, and he's going to be having to fight off Brian Greenlee here before too long. Of course, as you would expect, Brian Greenlee running a green car back there with that kind of subdued green look. Roy Collins behind him in car number 35, running in 24th position. Tony Schuin back there running in 25th, 30 car number 31, and that orange FINA machine. Now, of course, we talked about the running 195 down the backstretch just a minute ago. Difference the draft makes. Tony Schuin just went in turn 3, going 200 miles an hour. J.M. Cormier running in 26th position. Back behind him is Samuel Raymond, good old Sam, running back there in 27th position. And going back in front of him is behind him, Dustin Wardlow in the white 29. And going to old Miller ride is Michael Peters in car number 33. The old school Miller paint scheme almost kind of makes you think of Bobby Allison. You can tell my roots are NASCAR, I'm sorry. Frank Bieser running in car number 023. He's running back in 30th position. And since we talk about Ed, hey, let's jump on board Ed's car here. Ed Tutwaller right now running in 31st position. And of course, he carries that Dragonfly Racing onboard camera here for today. You take a look at the small little mirrors that you find on these Lotus 79 cars. Very big difference in some of the big mirrors that you see on today's race cars. It kind of makes you have a little extra appreciation of how some of these guys used to race with those small mirrors and still be able to keep tabs on what's going on around them and without spotters. So good racing angle here with the Dougie Beard camera and the Dragonfly Racing on-board camera here for today. Back behind him, Travis. I'm going to apologize, Travis, if I mess up your name, but I'm going to try. Jägerliner I believe is how you might say that. Of course, the driver from Indiana, he's running in 33rd position. Michael Goodman behind him. Actually, Travis is running 32nd. Michael Goodman now running in 32nd position in his red number 99. And then we circle back. As you see Michael Goodman into the pit road. Let's see what's going on there. It looks like it's a little front wing damage, so I wonder if he brushed the wall. But as he does that, as he comes down pit road, we were almost right there. Tanner, we cycle back around to the race leader, and guess what we find? Trevor Malone right alongside Dan Guerin. And who's the outside of them is Chris Stouffer. Chris Stouffer made a little bit of a run while we were talking about all that.
Yeah, I mean, you told me to keep an eye on the front pack, which I have, and I tell you what, it's been such tremendous racing, the best racing I've ever seen on Michigan International Speedway, whether it's on a stock car or an open wheel. I tell you what, these guys are just all over the place. I mean, the top 9 are just 1.0 seconds right next to each other, and it's less than a second through top 8. I mean, oh my gosh, and David Altman, he's just getting eaten up by these drivers. There's times he pushed tight and almost hit somebody into the wall, and that's where he just had to back out of it and kind of regain his composure. But I tell you what, he's staying strong, doing the best he can to stay with the leaders, and he's been pushing tight each time on the exit of the corner. But the race leaders and top 5 guys, heck, I should maybe say top 8 guys, have just been all over each other.
Yeah, you know, and Joe Branch wasn't up here before we started the through the field as well. I mean, he had to work his way up there as well. Now he's getting hungry, looking for 3rd position, and he's going to try to catch a little bit of draft off Trevor Malone here, and that might help him get into that 3rd position solidly. But surprise, surprise, Trevor Malone leads once again at the stripe, but Chris Stouffer might be trying to make it 3 wide once again. Kind of a little bit of a diagonal 3 wide, but you get the idea. So back behind him, Chris Stouffer now is Jason Galvin. Jason Galvin's going to take 4th away from Joe Branch, and then behind those guys is Bob Mikes and now Jake C. Wright. Jake C. Wright's still right up there right now, running in the top 5. As you look at Joe Branch get really wide, almost runs Jake Wright into the wall. Jake Wright almost didn't have anywhere to go right there, and that's going to allow Joe Hassert to get back up there as well. So very, very tight racing up at the front of this pack still.
Jake Wright's never left that high line, and he's not being aggressive about it either. I think he's the most patient guy within that top 9 set of cars up there. And right now he's going to go to the bottom side of the racetrack since David Altman's going to go high there. So he's going to go low and try to take that position away, hug back in line, go to the high lane again.
So he's running the old Harry Gunn. Oh, Trevor Malone really close to Dan Guerin.
Ooh, baby, ever so close, ever so fast.
Yeah, we're going to go take a look at this on the replay, and you're going to be able to see just how close they get as we're looking from the GSRC helicopter out there going into turn 3. Watch Dan Guerin drift down, and in an open wheel car, 9 times out of 10, you get that close and you have a disaster. But both those guys were able to keep it together, so great on them. Trevor Malone right now holding that inside line still. Dan Guerin on the outside. Oh wow! I bet they're both still sweating bullets.
Oh my gosh! I mean, look how close those tires are, really close to each other without hitting each other. Oh my gosh, that's crazy. And they're still battling for the race lead. Coming on lap cars, and this might, and this is crazy right here. This might play a little bit of a significant difference as the lap cars, unless the lap cars are understanding that the race leaders are coming up on them here at them. So it might play a role.
Yeah, one of those lap cars that just went around was David Altman coming out of the pits. So, of course, we knew about the pit strategy there. Unfortunately, it did not work out in David Altman's favor, and he is now sitting about a lap down as well to your leaders, but he is still back up there in that lead pack, so we'll have to see if maybe he can try to work up there, and maybe if the cards fall, he ends up getting his lap back the hard way. But you're looking now, once again, Chris Stouffer on the outside, thinking about trying to make that 3 wide. These guys are going to be catching up to, once again, Travis, I'm sorry if I mess up your name, Travis Jagerlander. He's going to be the next car that's going to be caught by the leaders here in just a couple of laps. But Trevor Malone, once again, on the inside of Dan Guerin, Chris Stouffer now behind them, and Bob Mikes now looking to try to make a play on the inside line, but he has his hands full even with Joe Branch back there.
You're talking about 7 more laps here, Adam, that these guys are possibly going to be making some green flag pit stops if we stay green. And we do have a pretty good battle going on here. And Jason Galvin, he's been slipping back. Right now, he's under attack, under fire. from Andrew Kinsella. Andrew Kinsella was one of the fastest cars that I've seen, and he qualified in the top 5, but he just has not been able to get back in that top 5 spot. He's been hanging around just outside the top 10 all race long, and right now with the race leaders, the way they've been battling out, it's bringing right him up towards the front. So no worries on Andrew Kinsella's part. Just, yeah, I figured he'd be a little more of a factor battling up there, but so far so good. Right now, that 3 wide for 3rd place up there. Holy cats!
Yeah, with, of course, you got the likes right now of Big Joe Hassert, Chris Stouffer back there with Bob Mikes as well. Dan Garrett back there. Oh, Dan Garrett, the wheels. Ooh.
Man, these two guys right here, they're flirting with disaster.
I am not going to lie. I saw Dan Guerin's left front tire go into Trevor Malone's right rear tire, and I thought we had an incident like we did on the backstretch a few laps ago. So that's getting really close for comfort. These guys right now, you can tell that they really, really want to be able to lead this pack on the pit road if it stays green until that point. So I think that's kind of what they're fighting for right now, is who's going to have that advantage to dictate everything. So Dan Guerin's on the middle right there, and you're looking at Bob Mikes now, thinking about trying to make it 3 wide. Didn't get quite the run that he was wanting to be able to do that. With Dan Guerin now getting a run down the backstretch on Trevor Malone. Trevor Malone's going to have, once again, the inside line here going into 3 and 4. Yeah, Dan Guerin loses a little bit of ground. You're starting to see the cars get light. You're starting to see, even though tire wear is not an issue, you do have to remember they are close to the end of a fuel run, so the tires, not bad, but they're not as good as what they were a little while ago. So these guys probably going to be wanting to get 4 new Goodyear tires on these things here before too long.
And you mentioned the cars getting light, Adam, and what happens when the cars get light? The speeds pick up. And what happens when you're in the draft and the speeds pick up? They pick up even more. I tell you what, the top speed I've seen today was about 203 entering turn 1, and that was Joe Branch back there in the 7th spot. And thankfully, the leaders, the way they're getting so close to each other, they're thankful iRacing doesn't have tire rubs to blow out tires.
Yeah, definitely, with these old school aluminum wheels as well. So Trevor Malone still in the lead. Right now, you're going to be seeing them pass the lap car of Travis Jagerliner here in any second now, possibly by the time they get into turn 3. So Travis's car should not play a role into the pit stops here, and I think he's going to tuck away off to the inside. Everybody should be able to get around him on the outside, but that is going to move Trevor Malone up to kind of the middle line. Dan Guerin's going to give him the room to get it done. Bob Mikes is back there in a big run, trying to make a play on that 3rd position, but kind of got slowed up a little bit, is Big Joe Hassert. So Big Joe Hassert has found his way back up into the mix.
He definitely has, and he's been patient doing it, and right now riding the solid top 5, riding that bottom side, picking up that draft, but he just picked up that draft and pushed tight, so he kind of had to let out of it just a little bit, and it looks like the biggest run out of that old deal was Bob Mikes out of the fast 4 right there. Holy cow, he did get a huge run, but he had nowhere to go with it on the race leaders, sitting solidly, consistently in the 3rd spot, as we should be opening up the fuel window here, and wow, holy cow, I almost ran over.
Yeah, and speaking of fuel, your Dragonfly Racing onboard camera with Ed Tutwiler is coming down pit road. He figured, hey, I'm getting ready to get lapped. Might as well come down and get my fuel and tires now. So we'll see where he comes out in relation to the leaders. He might actually ultimately fizzle out back into the main part of that lead pack once everything is said and done. But that does open up the question, because he pitted on the same lap as these leaders. When are the leaders going to come in? Is it going to be this time? Is it going to be next time? But we are definitely getting close to green flag pit stops here at Michigan International Speedway.
Tell you what, I think Ed Tutwiler just took fuel only, because he was in and out just like that, unless he took 4 tires. Well, that was a fast 4-tire pit stop, though.
Well, we'll have to see, and it might be a little bit of a strategy play, maybe try to give him a few more positions with this spread out as at the back, the very, very back of this pack is looking at Trevor Malone, drifts up just a little bit on Dan Guerin. Dan Guerin's able to hold the line and gets actually a pretty decent run going down the backstretch, but you have to think that you don't want to be too wide once green flag pit stops here, once they start to occur. We are within the pit window now to end the race. If they come down into pit lane, they will not have to pit again. We are within that ending pit window now, so these guys right now probably getting a little close on fuel.
Look at this, Big Joe Hassert looking towards the outside line, thinking about it. or was he just trying to escape the draft? And it looks like he was just trying to escape the draft. He didn't have too big of a momentum to try to overtake the race leaders. Here he goes again, trying to utilize that draft. He can go down to the inside if he really wants to. Not going to happen. They're coming up on a lap car. I think all three, four of these guys understand that, which they do.
And that's once again Ed Tutwiler back
There we go.
And there's some Trevor Malone. Trevor Malone's going to go ahead and take the high road here, or low road, come on the pit road, and with looks like who's that car bike? Bob Mike's right behind him. So Bob Mike's and Trevor Malone, they're the first ones to pull the string. Of course, Bob Mike's, I just noticed, has an Iron Man helmet. That is one of the coolest helmets I've ever seen in iRacing, and he's going to be bringing his black and gold number 17 machine into pit road. Your race leader now, Trevor Malone, in his pit stall. How fast of a pit stop is he going to get here? For a second there, I thought he almost blew it, but he ended up hitting his marks just perfect. Bob Mike's is away. Trevor Malone is away. Bob Mike's actually ends up beating Trevor Malone off pit road. What is that going to do once the pit stops cycle through here? So where's the rest of the crowd? Where are they going to filter out? Well, the lead pack right now, they might catch Trevor Malone before he gets back up to speed here. You'll have to see. Dustin Wardlow now coming on, James Cormier coming on pit road, Brian Greeley on pit road. Yeah, pit road becoming a busy place here on with 32 laps to go.
Kind of hard to tell if they're taking tires or not, because usually when you can tell if they're taking tires, usually you can see the car actually go and lift it up on the jack, and I am currently not seeing that. And we do have a car on pit road that is totally missing his pit stall, trying to make out who that is down on pit road. That is actually JM Premier trying to get into his pit stall, and that's one of the biggest keys into this race.
Here's a big key. Big Joe Hassert comes off pit road. He is rounding 1 and 2 right now, and who's he going to come out behind? They're going to come out perfectly timed, but Big Joe Hassert still coming up to speed. So he's going to tuck in and try to use that draft. If the draft wasn't such of a big player here, that very well could have been a big deal for Big Joe Hassert. But you see how a little bit more spread out they are. So what's going to happen here with the next pack? Well, here they come. Joe Branch on pit road. James Krahula on pit road. As they're bringing down their cars, sliding down to that pit road speed limit of 55 miles per hour. Scott Bolster back there in that green and white Skull machine. He is on pit road. And Michael Gray on pit road as well. He actually came across the line second the lap previous. They are going to go ahead and come in for their stops. And big moment on the backstretch there as we're looking at, see, that's Jason Galvan. And who else is that back? Trevor Malone's involved in that mess.
Yeah, it's a pretty big mess back there. I tell you what, these guys are a little bit all over each other. They got to give each other the room, which they are.
I feel that's going to continue. Now, a lot of those guys are starting to come back onto pit road. So where's the advantage going to lie? Well, right now, Joe Branch might end up being the one that it actually works in favor of. They're on the backstretch. They're pushing their cars. They're getting close. They're running right now about 185 miles an hour. That pack's back there, but they are actually a halfway decent ways back. A little further back than I thought. Oh, almost had a moment there. I think Scott Bolster got a little loose going into 3 on cold tires and really had to make Trevor Malone check up along with Bob Mikes as well. So that was almost a big moment back there, but they get everything straightened out back into single file.
Yeah, just kind of look and see who's all got to make pit stops. Everybody's pretty much made their pit stops. David Allman's going to have to make another pit stop within about maybe 15 laps from now there, Adam.
Yeah, and I believe that is Joe Branch's first laps led all day. Correct me if I'm wrong on that. And he's already going to have James Krahula sneaking by the inside to try to lead the next one. But the more that these two run side by side, the faster that the likes now of Jake Wright running in third, who is now only a half second back from Joe Branch. Trevor Malone's back there, Bob Mike, Scott Bolster. These guys are coming and coming fast. Excuse me.
Yeah, coming fast. What a stop by James Krahula, though. I tell you what, and that's going to put him as our race leader of this race. But he's liking that.
Yeah, Joe Branch taking the lead back here. It's going down the backstretch. James Krahula is going to take another look on the inside of that burgundy skate machine with, is that Remax or an old Pepsi Cola logo on the back wing? I can't really tell. Ah, okay. It's a local roller rink that's near those guys, near James Krahula. So, really neat paint scheme there. I like that a lot. But skating around the track right now on the new, fresh Goodyears. Joe Branch is going to take a look on the inside. They're going to try to swap off here a little bit, but still, Jake Wright. They were in that draft area, so they've been able to tuck back up there. Trevor Malone right now still fighting off Bob Mikes. Of course, they came off pit road together. But you see what the pit stops did to this lead pack. Yeah, you've got a couple cars up here that are fighting, but they're definitely a lot more spread out than what they were, and there's fewer cars up here as well. In fact, Joe Hassert finds himself all the way back in 7th position. Chris Stouffer back in 8th, and Jason Galvin, who was up front earlier on, is now finding himself back in 9th position.
Who was the other driver that was battling with Trevor Malone earlier that I'm not even seeing in the top 10, I don't think?
Dan Garrett. Where's Dan Garrett? Where did Dan Garrett fall in?
Where did Dan Garrett go?
Dan Garrett right now, I believe, is running 28th position. Let's see what happened to Dan Garrett here. Dan Garrett. Dan Garrett's on pit road with a torn-up race car. We're going to have to see what happened to Dan. I think it just happened a minute ago, so we might be able to get Joe to go back and take a peek. Give me 1 minute here.
Yeah, Dan Garrett. There's something I don't think he got involved with anything. I don't recall him that it happened. I have to look back a couple laps here to see on his end to see if he touched the wall or anything, but I am not seeing him making any kind of contact with another driver. Okay.
It was his lap 68 going on to pit road. It was the exact same thing you brought up in the pre-race show. Brakes, he ended up getting on him a little too hard, and it snapped on him and threw him into the inside wall.
And you don't want to beat yourself coming onto pit road. Usually I say don't beat yourself on pit road. Don't beat yourself coming onto pit road, because you got to remember, you're transitioning yourself from about 185 miles an hour in the middle of a corner down to about 55 miles an hour.
And on that pit road exchange, I also saw that Andrew Kinsella is on pit road as well, sitting without him in the cockpit. He had contact with Jason Galvin coming to their pit stalls. So a little bit of action there that on pit road that wouldn't have expected to see. He ended up being one of the cars that ended up missing his pit stall with the contact and everything as well.
Man, oh man, a lot of activity must have took place all on pit road, and that's a crazy thing. I mean, a lot more action can happen on a pit road because you're trying to get into your pit stall. And keep in mind there, Adam, that you can only go through a maximum of 3 pit stalls, so you're trying to really get on the pit road without hitting anybody.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, well, that's okay. So we won't be able to get a replay of that. But that's okay. The action up front? And I'm seeing quite a bit of.
Holy cow! Down in turn 3 and 4, man. I tell you what, Jake Wright almost ran over. I'm trying to figure out who that was. Bob Mikes. He had to get on the brakes to really avoid it.
Well, I'll tell you that the iRacing Simulator might have thought something happened there, because Jake Wright on my screen has a really torn up race car, but obviously in actuality he does not. So he's actually okay, but he definitely lost a few positions there. Right now, falling back into the clutches of Chris Stouffer, and Big Joe Hassert's back there as well. That little pack right there getting hungry, and on all of that.
Whoa! Look, oh my gosh.
Look who found himself back up front.
Yes, sir.
Surprise. Trevor Malone. Trevor Malone has pretty much controlled the day. Once he gets up front, he is very hard to pass. So he is definitely going to be the cream of the crop here for today. People are going to have to try to get around him. And that's exactly what Joe Branch is trying to do. He really dives it in going into 3. He's going to try to hold that low line. He's going to drift up a little bit. And that's going to allow the car of Trevor Malone to kind of scoot away a little bit. In fact, he might lose that second position right now to James Krahula. James Krahula is going to slide in. He's going to try to use that draft off Trevor Malone. Right now, 20 laps to go. We are now in the last 5th of this race.
Yeah, and if you look through the top 10, there was a couple of drivers when you were going through the field there, Adam. There was a couple of drivers that were outside that top 15 mark, and right now they're making their presence known. One of those drivers is George Enzaldo, league organizer, running in the 10th position. Really nobody to draft with out front. But I tell you what, he's found himself a good top 10 salvaging a position as it was the top 8 cars. They were less than a second from each other, but that's kind of separated just a little bit.
Yeah, well, right now the action is going to continue up front with Trevor Malone and James Grahula starting to try to do something. James Grahula is going to try to do something on the outside. I'm thinking right now, 19 laps to go, it's going to have to take a pretty aggressive move to try to get around Trevor Malone. And James Grahula, we've seen him be able to pull off some pretty amazing moves before, so we'll have to see if he has anything left in his personal tank for that. And of course, with everything that happened last week with kind of pit stop cycles.
Oh my gosh, contact between 2 drivers right here. That was Joe Branch and Bob Mikes coming off turn 4. They made contact. Both cars got a little loose, but they both salvaged and managed to save their cars.
Yeah, Joe Peak, masterful director, was able to catch that on the replay. You're going to see them get close together, and guess what? Touch wheels in an open wheel car. You can see Joe Branch really had to saw on that wheel going at about 190 miles an hour to try to save that car and keep it going straight, but everybody is able to continue on and still log laps. In fact, Bob Mikes now is going to settle into 3rd position with Joe Branch sitting in 4th. Now behind those guys, you got Big Joe Hassert back there, Chris Stouffer, Scott Bolster, and Jake C. Wright. Jake has kind of slid to the back of this lead pack right here, and it's just going to be, I still imagine he'll be trying to pick off a few positions before everything, of course, is said and done. But the said and done part is going to be happening pretty quick. We are down to 17 laps to go. Been green flag now for quite a while, and the racing continues hard and fast up front as Trevor Malone dives his car into turn 3 going 195 miles an hour. And you can see the time difference between him and James Grahula. James Grahula on the outside in that burgundy machine is really only just a couple of hundredths of a second back behind him. In fact, he's going to take a look and try to go alongside him going into turn 1. And a lot of what you're seeing with these guys taking that line where he's not exactly following Trevor going into the corner, that's to keep that air on that front wing and keep that car from understeering too bad, because you understeer, of course, Tanner, you lose time.
Lose time, and that just gives someone another person behind you to overtake you. And so you want to kind of escape that draft, stay out of their draft just a little bit, and just kind of be patient about it. And that's what a lot of these drivers are doing. I mean, Jake Wright's the biggest guy I've seen that really has done that. I mean, out of everybody in that top 10, he's probably the most conservative guy in that top 10. Not making aggressive moves, staying out of the draft, and just being patient about it.
That's right. Playing it smart is the name of the game right now. But you're getting to a point, 15 laps to go, where, at what point does being aggressive, wanting to go for that win, going to take a lead in the thought process there? As you look at Bob Mikes sitting at 4th, Joe Branch is going to take a look. Bob Mikes at 3rd, Joe Branch is going to take a look at 3rd, sitting in 4th position. Chris Stouffer starting to use that high line a little bit more. I think he's just trying to get the lay of the land at this point and try to figure out exactly which line does he want to be in as we get closer to that 10 to go mark.
I tell you what, Joe Branch, he's probably going to want to stay behind the race leaders and try to make a big run with about 2 laps to go, or the last lap. Bob Mikes, Joe Branch, Chris Stouffer, and Scott Bolster all started outside the top 10 in this race. They are finding themselves in the top 6.
And of course, that's about where they were about 10-15 laps ago, and still right up at the lead pack, fighting hard and try to get every little bit that they can. Jake Wright still, of course, right at the tail end of that pack. I really think Jake is just kind of sitting back there, waiting, just watching for something to happen here. Yeah, I think he has a stronger car than 8th position right now. Trevor Malone really kind of running that defensive line. James Grahula, this is exactly the kind of move that could get James Grahula the lead. He's going to dive it into going turn 3, going 198 miles an hour, and he ends up having to let off a bit before something bad happened. But he did show that Trevor Malone, he did put him on notice, though, that, hey, I'm still here. Don't discount me. I am still here. This lead is not safe for you. But you definitely saw Trevor Malone kind of read that already and try to take that defensive line.
And you can probably back me up on this, Adam. Drivers in NASCAR do the same thing. They test the waters a little bit on how they can try to get the race lead before the last lap even comes around. And James Grahula did it right there. Tried going to the bottom. That didn't work. Well, I'm going to have to try something else here before we get about last 5 laps to go.
That's right, you know, and of course in IndyCar here, especially. James Goulet's drifted up close to the wall.
He saved it.
All right, but he's going to slip back to the back of this pack, so obviously things did not quite work out well. And of course, back up front, Bob Mike's now taking a look, but that's Chris Stouffer. That's Chris Stouffer. He's going to be trying to take a look and maybe make it 3 wide, but he's going to back out of it and just kind of sit back in behind those guys. He doesn't want to lose that 3rd position back there to Scott Bolster right now running in 4th position. But Bob Mike's actually has a pretty good run going down the backstretch. Not a good enough run to take that lead going to 3, so Trevor Malone's going to be able to fight back there on the inside. Of course, now we're coming to the line for 10 laps to go. We've gone 180 miles of this 200-mile race here this evening, and they are still going just as hard as what they were on about lap 3 of this race. So Bob Mike's right now running in 2nd, Trevor Malone 1st, and of course going back to 3rd, where those guys are watching right now is Chris Stouffer. Chris Stouffer's just kind of watching, just kind of waiting. What's going to happen up in front of him? What am I going to have to do? What cards am I going to have to play in order to get around both those guys? Going back to your point, though, about Bob Mike's gets really close.
Oh, my gosh. Tell you what, if they make contact, someone goes for a spin, it could create the big one.
It really could.
And we are in that 10 lap to go mark where the aggression's going to get really picked up here, Adam.
And you already see it. Chris Stouffer is taking a really hard look this time on the outside of turn 1. But once again, I think he's going to lose that ground to the outside there. I think the only time that turn 1 going outside there is going to play an advantage. Whoa, aggressive move by Bob Mike's. Bob Mike's trying to creep Chris Stouffer behind him. He's not. They're 3 wide, down the backstretch, going into turn 3. 3
wide, ain't coming up on lap traffic eventually.
And of course, the lap traffic they're getting ready to come up on is Samuel Raymond and also Robert Bluen. They're back there. They'll be up on those 2 red cars here before too long, as once again, Chris Stouffer looking on the outside here going into turn 1.
Oh man, what position would you rather be in, Adam? I know you asked me that in the early going of the race, but as it sits right now, you're coming to 7 laps to go. What position would you be in? Would you rather be in 2nd, 3rd, the lead?
I think the way that Trevor Malone has been able to hold that lead, I think he right now is exactly where he wants to be. And it goes back to the point you were making a few minutes ago about, testing the waters. That's exactly what these guys have to do. It's going to take laps to try to complete a pass if you're able to do something on the outside of Trevor Malone. And that's kind of, I think, where right now Bob Mike's is thinking that it's going to take him a couple laps to get around it. So I think he's already planning that end race strategy if he has something left in the tank to be able to do. If I'm not in 1st where I want to be, is 3rd. And I think Chris Stouffer right now is just waiting. He's waiting in the wings. He wants to see what happens because all it's going to take is those 2 to get a little bit of racy. He's going to go zooming by on the outside.
Oh, contact wreck. Scott Bolster spinning, and it's going to hit the inside barrel.
Oh, will that bring out a caution?
No caution, though, so we stay green. I believe he made contact with, trying to see who he made contact with. That was Big Joe Hazard.
An unfortunate end to his race. He had such a good race going right up at the front, and then unfortunately, you see what happens there. Wheels touch right into that tire barrier right at the edge of the pit wall. And of course, while that's going on, the battle for the lead continues on. Trevor Malone still holding on to that top spot despite a very strong challenge from Bob Mike's. And of course, guess who else is getting back up into that fight is Joe Branch right now sitting up in 4th position. He is still there. He's going to be trying to take something from Chris Stouffer before too long. Right now, we are on 5 laps to go. You see the lap traffic up in front of your leaders right now. They're going to be coming up on Robert Bluen. Michael Goodman is on the bottom. He's getting out of the way. Robert Blumen's down there. He should be getting out of the way too. They're going to be catching him before too long as well, as Trevor Malone still continues to command this race, keeping Bob Mike's behind him. But how long is he going to be able to keep him behind him? Is he going to be able to take it all the way to the checkered flag? 4 laps to go.
I don't know. You just got to get at least a fender ahead of that nose to really beat Trevor Malone to the line. And I know Bob Mike's knows that. We washed up here. Oh, it's getting
big
dicey.
Run from Chris Stouffer. Big
go.
Run from Chris Stouffer.
down that backstretch. Let's see what can produce on that bottom side of the racetrack. Pushing up just a little bit. Still fighting for the race lead. Trevor Malone has that higher racing line. Can he make that higher line work on the exit? Bob Mikes, what is he going to do? Try to make it 3 wide, use the draft, stay in line? Oh, man, so many decisions.
Oh, but Trevor Malone fights back. That car is just on rails. He is able to take back that. Even though Christopher had the advantage there going down most of the front straightaway, he's able to get it back. And once again, we go back to Trevor Malone 1, Bob Mikes 2nd, and Christopher in 3rd. Bob Mikes is starting to fight on the outside as they go into turn 3. He's back into a familiar position. He's going to drop down just a little bit. They get really close to touching wheels. Yeah, these guys are pushing every little bit that they can out of these Lotuses. Man, and, who'd have thought that these Lotus 79, the designers, would be thinking that this many years later they'd be racing a virtual version of this car mere inches off of each other, going wheel to wheel at a place like Michigan where a lot is on the line, going 200 miles an hour down into some of these corners. Robert Blumen is right there. He's the red car you see on the front of your screen. He is getting ready to go a lap down to the leaders. And Trevor Malone has the inside line right now. He's letting them know, hey, I'm here. Just so you know, Robert, we're coming up behind you. We're coming up behind you fast, and we are fighting for the win as we are coming to that white flag.
Yep, and circle him right now. If anything happens to those top 3 drivers going for the win, circle him. Big Joe Hazard running in 4th. He is in tabs with the race leader, but we do got a side-by-side coming off turn number 2. Christopher gets a huge run off the exit of the corner, looking towards the inside. Lap cars playing a big heavy-duty traffic here. Oh, Trevor Malone gets in. Yeah, he bumped the right rear tire of him, of the lap car. It's Christopher versus Bob Mikes coming to a line through 3 and 4.
But I don't think nobody's going to be able to get a run on Bob Mikes. I think Bob Mikes is going to be able to take this thing as we see somebody down there on the apron. Bob Mikes is going to win your 200-mile race at Michigan for the Lotus 79 Lionheart Retro IndyCar Series.
Woo! Let's go to a replay of Trevor here. I mean, wow, wow.
I don't know. I don't want to judge, but I don't know about the decision. I think the lap car was trying to get out of the way and then just ended up changing lines. And I think if he would have held his line, things would have been okay. But it's just sometimes one of those things that just happens in racing. And unfortunately, Trevor Malone, after dominating the race today and being able to keep up in front of this race the way that he did, unfortunately, it comes to that ending. As we ride along, he's going to finish in 20th position, much, much further back than I think anybody would have thought.
Yeah, and still finishing backwards. It's now backed up to 21st position unofficially. But man, oh man, that was some racing coming to the line, though, at least to the back stretch. Not a night Trevor Malone hoped for, but man, that's very unfortunate right there.
It certainly is. Well, with that development, we just see Bob Mikes starting to go ahead and light up those big fat rear tires on this Lotus 79. We're going to go ahead and go to break, and we'll talk to a few guys and also take a look at your final standings coming up. Well, it was definitely an exciting finish to the Lotus 79 Lionheart Retro IndyCar Series here at Michigan International Speedway. We're going to go ahead and run through your race results here. Bob Mikes. Wow, big win for Bob Mikes. That's going to shake up the point standings a little bit. Christopher coming home in second position. Big Joe Hasser in third position. We're going to talk to all three of those guys coming up here in just a minute. James Grahula coming home in fourth. So a good finish for him after Homestead last week. That'll probably place him up pretty high in the point standings. Fifth position, Joe Branch. In sixth position, Jake C. Wright. George Anzaldo coming home in seventh position, in Michael Gray. I know it says Racing Kangaroo Gray, but it's actually Michael Gray in eighth position. Chris Lanini coming home in ninth. In last week's winner coming home in Jason Galvin. So good win for my fellow broadcaster. Of course, he's out of Bakersfield. Tanner, go ahead and take 11th through 20th here.
Yeah, and 11th through 14th here, drivers are really starting outside the top 20. This is going to be Matthew Mercer, who's going to finish 11th tonight, start 24th. Pierre Digel, start 33rd, finishes 12th tonight. James Paulson, 20th to 13th. And Tyler Turnbull, who qualified, actually did not take a qualifying time, started 38th, finishes 14th on the grid tonight. Patrick Taylor finishes 15th after starting in the top 10. Tony Schoen finishes 16th. Rory Collins in 17th. Brian Greenlee finishes 18th. Bradley Walters will finish 19th, and rounding out the top 20 is Michael Peters.
Yep, in 21st position, we're going to find Trevor Malone, who led the most laps here for today and really was the dominant car. He ends up about 28 seconds off the leaders. 22nd position, J.M. Cormier. He had a relatively quiet day back there. Dustin Wardlow, 23rd position. Robert Lewin in 24th. In Samuel Raymond and Frank Beezer, all three of those gentlemen finished a lap down. David Altman found himself up front based on pit strategy, was holding his own up front, but unfortunately ended up having to be a little bit off cycle on the pit stops, and he's going to finish a lap down as well, back in 27th position. Tutwiler, who of course had our Dragonfly Racing onboard camera here for today, finished in 28th. Travis Jaegerliner, and Travis, I'm sorry, let me know exactly how to pronounce your name, and I'll make sure I get it right next time. 29th position, 3 laps down, and Michael Goodman finishing 4 laps down in 30th.
Yeah, and outside the top 31st, finishing 31st tonight is Scott Bolster, who was running up towards the front, but he made contact with another car that sent him towards the inside barrels, which ended his race. Dan Guerin, who was running in second place throughout most of the race and battling for the race lead with Trevor Malone, had an unfortunate pit road entry incident that'll cause him to finish 32nd. Andrew Casella had a pit road incident. He'll finish in 33rd. Michael Lawler in 34th. Jack Bogan in 35th. Brennan Hubbard will finish 36th, and last but not least, the Stephen Pauly finishes the 37 cars that started this race. Jesse Vincent in 38th, which I believe he is a race admin, race official.
Yeah, so there you have it. So we'll see how that's going to shake out the point standings once everything becomes official. And of course, you can always find that on Lionheart's Racing website. And of course, we'll give you that address here in a little bit. But hey, I believe that we're going to go ahead and start talking to our guys here that finished a pretty exciting race. I believe, Tanner, you're going to go ahead and take our third place finisher.
Definitely going to try to take our third place finisher. That is going to be Big Joe Hazard. See if we can get Big Joe Hazard in here. Mic'd up for an interview.
Second, we got to see here.
There we go. Getting him all mic'd up and ready to go. And Big Joe Hazard, you got me now, bud?
Hey, what's going on?
There we go. You finished in the top 3 tonight after a little bit of a miscue on the backstretch with some lap cars there. And I tell you what, you may have made contact with another car coming off turn 4, but you didn't give up and you utilized the draft to stick with those guys up there. Tell me your thoughts in the closing moments of that race.
I was just trying to get a top 5 at that point. I was trying to wait for the car to come to me, because before that last pit stop, I made a run. I think I pretty much got up to the lead once the fuel got low. It just handled better for me. So I thought that the car would come to me a little bit sooner. So the run I was getting was a little bit late. It didn't feel really good until about 2-3 laps ago. I got a couple positions out of it, so I was glad I was able to avoid the carnage, and I'll take a podium. I mean, miscue on pit road and got caught or slid through my box once and got caught behind Dan when he spun entering the pits, and I think to recover and get a podium out of it's a good night.
Boy, for a driver that got a podium finish, he has seen and almost been involved in a lot of events that took place on the track and on pit road. I mean, so you cannot be disappointed for a top 3 finish on a podium finish there. Now, throughout the day, your majority in the top 10, and passing seemed like it was always back and forth. Was it really hard to hold a position out there, or try to overtake a position with utilizing the draft?
Man, this is the hardest. Besides racing a stock car, these things raced like stock cars. They were big, heavy boats punching big holes through the air. I feel like I struggled if I got down in that first lane, and I struggled when I got way up high. So it was that second and third lane where I did most of my work, and unfortunately, I think that's where everybody was. But somehow there were guys that they'd dive under me and pass me like I was standing still. I didn't understand that, but I just early in the run just wasn't suiting me, and I'd get adjusted to it by the end of the run when the car was a little bit lighter, and just try to make up my positions there. That was the plan, was to try to make a move with 10 to go, and car just wasn't. I think I was a little heavy on fuel to where I wanted to be.
Yeah, definitely. You get a bonus point under your belt tonight for leading a lap, and now with a dismal finish at Homestead Miami Speedway 2 weeks ago, and you get a podium this week. How do you think your chances will bring up for a possible win in 2 weeks' time at the Watkins Glen International?
Watkins Glen is a track I like. I don't know if I've been working on my skill on the road courses necessarily, but I definitely got some equipment upgrades in the off season, so hopefully that should help me a little bit here. Obviously I'm more of an oval specialist, and Homestead was obviously a mechanical failure, so I think that was just kind of a fluky thing, and I don't think it's going to be indicative of how my season's going to go. I think tonight is a little bit closer to what I'm expecting out of my season.
Yeah, most definitely. Well, we thank you, Big Joe, for taking your time and come talk with us, and we will see you, and best of luck at Watkins Glen International.
Thanks, Tanner.
That was Big Joe Hazard, folks, getting a podium finish tonight after starting in the second place. And Adam, I believe you have caught up with second place, Chris Stouffer.
Yeah, I sure have, and of course we'll get Chris in here. And Mr. Stouffer, what a interesting race there, right at the tail end of it. What was it like from your seat?
Well, I'll tell you, I was behind those guys for the last 20 laps, just biding my time. I saw them get real close a couple times and was holding my breath, waiting for something to happen, and then I saw those lap cars coming. And I kept thinking, those lap cars are just going to pull down and let us kind of go on by and, race it out, and they didn't. It made it interesting there at the end. I know if I was Trevor, I wouldn't be too happy at this point.
Yeah, of course, I think a lot of us feel for Mr. Malone, but at the same time, second half of the race, you were up there almost the entire time, and lots of close wheel-to-wheel action out there with these Lotus 79 cars. What was your feelings, especially going toward green flag pit stops and everything else, and how were those cars feeling at the tail end of those fuel runs tonight?
Honestly, I thought it felt better on less fuel. I mean, of course, the car was faster. Maybe, I like that. Personally, I like setups that are a little bit looser. So that might have played into it as well. So I was really liking it throughout the entire run. coming on the pits, that was a little scary for me because I hadn't practiced that a lot, and I think I got on a little bit slow, came off pretty good, but of course getting into the pits a little bit slow can cost you a few tenths, maybe even second here or there. I was able to make it back up and get back up to kind of where I was. Started 22nd. I'm typically not a great qualifier, so I'm used to having to come through the field like that, and it always makes it fun too.
All right, then one last question here before we let you go. Of course, next time out here in a couple weeks, we're going to add some right turns into the mix. We're going to Watkins Glen, and how do you feel about your chances there?
Well, if it was a year ago, I'd be a little bit leery going into it, but I've actually put a lot of time in on the road over the last year, so I'm real excited about it. It's one of my favorite tracks. I think it is for a lot of guys. It's easy to kind of get down, but it's fun because it's close, tight racing, and I look forward to it. Hopefully if I get a top 10 out of it, I think that's a good accomplishment for me. Anything above that, that's just, that'd be gravy.
All right. Well, hey, Chris, good job on your second place finish here tonight. And, maybe we'll be talking to you again after Watkins Glen.
Yeah, hopefully, it definitely feels a lot better to be here after what happened last week, or last race with the technical failure, as we'll call it, while I was leading that. That was definitely sore. So this helps make up for that a little bit.
All right. Well, I think I heard some after race beverages popping up there in the background. So we'll let you get to it, Chris. And once again, congratulations, and you have yourself a good night. I believe that Tanner is going to be catching up with our race winner, Bob Mikes. And Tanner, take it away.
Yes, sir. The champagne is spraying in victory lane, and Bob Mikes, man, he gets an 8th place finish at Homestead Miami Speedway, and now he wins today. And Bob, man, congratulations on the win. And I tell you what, that was the longest side-by-side race, and I didn't know who was going to win there up here in the booth, but take us through the last couple laps in your retrospective.
Basically, it was just a race to the finish from the last 20 laps. I mean, nobody was able to pass Trevor on that high lane, so it was mostly just trying to get the run on the high lane as best you can outside of the turns as best you can.
Yeah, definitely. It seemed like that was really hard to do because you were side by side with Trevor Malone for a number of laps, fighting for that race lead. And there's times drivers would actually literally pull out to try to avoid that draft so they don't get tight on entry of the corner. If you and Trevor Malone were fighting for that race lead coming to the checkers, what could you have done to try to get that win away from Malone?
The biggest thing to do is he was running a smart race, and he was always running the middle lane, so he wasn't creating heat in his tires. So the thing you'd have to do is on the last lap, you'd have to try to get him down below that second groove and just see if his tires would heat up within a lap and be able to pass him on the outside.
Yeah, definitely, and it just seemed really, just by looking at it, I've turned some practice laps, and it was hard to do. It was really hard to do. At the halfway point of the race, you found yourself in the top 10, and you pretty much stayed there until the race end. At the halfway point of the race, did you ever think you were going to probably show up as a podium finish today after all the 3 wide racing that we have seen?
Oh yeah, I definitely thought I would. This track, it's a love-hate relationship. I don't really like racing it too much because I've raced it a whole bunch, but I'm really good at it. So it's just one of those things where I just knew I was going to be up toward the top 5 and be a contender. And it's awesome to be on the first place at the podium.
All right there, Bob. Now, you have 2 top 10s so far in the first 2 races. Now we go to a totally different racetrack. That is the Watkins Glen International. How do you feel about keeping your top 10 streak and possibly another win in this Lionheart Retro Series?
If I'm able to keep a top 10 at Watkins Glen, it's going to feel like a victory. I haven't done much road racing. I'm not particularly well or good at it. So just keeping it on track and getting the top 10 would just be a victory for myself.
Sounds like a good plan there, Bob. Well, we thank you for coming to take the time with us, and we'll let you go celebrate with your crew on this fine victory here at Michigan International Speedway, and we will see you at Watkins Glen.
Sounds good, guys. You guys have a good night.
That was Bob Mikes, folks, with the win tonight at Michigan. I tell you what, Adam, we've seen some tremendous racing today, some of the best I've ever seen at Michigan. Now we're going to go left and right in 2 weeks' time at Watkins Glen. I think they are using the boot, if I'm not mistaken. So that's going to be a really interesting race. It's going to be a lot of fun to watch. I'm excited.
Yeah, me too. And of course, we'll be right here on GSRC to bring you the action. But as far as today, definitely exciting finish, exciting race, lots of side-by-side racing. I think that's going to be what we're going to be expecting to see out of these Lotus 79 cars with the Lionheart Retro IndyCar Series. Tanner, it was nice calling the race here with you tonight. A couple of people that we'd like to thank. Of course, we've got to thank Lionheart organizing this series, of course, taking it over from Jimmy Eifling, previously ran as a kart retro series, and just doing a great job continuing on that legacy. And I mentioned the Lionheart website. That's www.lionheartracingseries.com. Go there, find out more information. Lots of great series with these Lionheart guys. Thanks to the software and hardware that we use for our broadcast that you can see listed there on your screen. Additional thanks to our musical contributors Eric Echolm and Casey Lalonde, whose music you can also find at the websites you see there. And thanks to the team today, Tanner, Joe, Dougie. If you'd like to find out more about GSRC, you can find it at globalsimracingchannel.com, along with archived races and upcoming broadcasts. We're also on Twitter at GSRC Channel and Facebook at facebook.com/globalsimracingchannel. The next race, Thursday, February 23rd, Watkins Glen. We're going to be there for 100 miles of action. Once again, same time, 10:35 p.m. Eastern Standard Time in the U.S. We also have upcoming races for other series on your screen, so you can check those out and mark them down on your calendar. Till next time, race clean, race hard, and we'll see you at the track.